My name is Aria Vale, 31 years old. The text landed on a Wednesday afternoon, blue-white against my monitor like a small siren. Adrian. Hey babe, Lila's going through a rough patch after her breakup. I'm going to stay at her place for a week to help. Don't be insecure. Back next Thursday. Love you. Don't be insecure was the preemptive strike. Phrase as padlock. Accusation set before any reaction. Lila. The best friend from college. The one who accidentally called him handsome at my birthday dinner. The one whose hands lingered on his forearm when she laughed. The ex-girlfriend he insisted was basically family. I typed 2 words. Me, have fun. A heart emoji floated back like confetti. Clarity didn't feel like rage. It felt like cold air after a storm. Thin, precise. I left work early and stepped into my apartment, the one Adrian gradually colonized. His joggers on the chair, beard trimmer on my sink, protein tubs stacked like skyline in the pantry. He'd never joined the lease. He was saving up. He was always saving up. I opened my laptop. First, the Wi-Fi. New SSI, new password. He worked from home 3 days a week. Tomorrow could be a character building day. Second, mail forwarding. Every statement, package, credit card promo to his parents' address in the suburbs. They liked to ask when we were finally moving in together. They could now ask why they were finally receiving his bills again. Third, boxes. I labeled them like a museum archivist. Closet, casual, bath, grooming, kitchen, Miss C. His succulents, perpetually on hospice, went gently into one bin. I am not a monster. I am organized. Fourth, streaming. Netflix, Hulu, Max, the accounts that had become communal despite being mine. Password rotation, 2-factor on, new recovery email. Let Lila's place host its own entertainment budget. Fifth, emergency contacts. Removed Adrian at work and at the gym. Slotted my sister in. If there was an emergency, I didn't want the responder calling a man who just informed me he'd be living with his ex for a week. The apartment looked different by sunset. Lighter. The couch sat without decorative throw blankets he insisted were cozy. The closet exhaled enough space for my winter coats to breathe. It wasn't revenge. It was a restoration. He texted sweet nothings from Lila's couch, lined with the word babe, as if it could mortar the week into something noble. Adrian. Making her dinner. Poor thing hasn't eaten all day. Miss you. Me. Nice. He didn't notice the temperature. Some people never do until the pipes burst. Thursday arrived like a dare. Around 6, a key clawed at my lock and failed. The scratching went on, irritated. Aria, the key's not working. I opened the door to the chain. Adrian stood in a storm-creased coat with his weekend bag and a smile calibrated for forgiveness. Hey, weird, must be the cold, he said, pushing lightly at the door. Not the cold, I said. I had the locks changed. His smile held for 3 seconds too long, then tried on confusion, then offense, then patient boyfriend. What? Why? Did something happen? You moved out, I said, and opened the door fully. A neat line of boxes waited like a small parade. I updated security. I didn't move out, he laughed, voice tinny. I was helping Lila for a week. You texted you'd be living at your ex-girlfriend's. For a week. That's not a boundary nudge, Adrian. That's an eviction notice you wrote to yourself. His eyes hardened. God, you're really doing this? You're being petty. I shrugged. Your belongings are labeled. Mail is going to your parents. Wi-Fi's for residents only. Please collect your things. He took a breath, switched scripts. You're insecure. Lila and I are just friends. Then why call me insecure before I said anything? I asked. Because I knew you'd overreact. You anticipated my overreaction to you moving in with your ex, I said. Got it. He tried to shoulder past me. I stood still. The hallway camera blinked. Always recording, always legal in common areas here. You can't just kick me out, Aria. I've lived here 10 months. You've stayed here 10 months. You're not on the lease. You left voluntarily. I'm asking you to take your boxes. He set down his bag carefully, the way you set down a thought you don't know how to carry, and pulled out his phone. Fine, I'll call Lila. This is crazy. He dialed, turned away. Hey, yeah, she changed the locks. No, it's psycho. Can you come? I leaned against the doorframe, the calm kind that drives people like Adrian mad. He kept tossing phrases over his shoulder. She's spiraling. She's being dramatic. You know how she is. The translation was simple. I am reasonable. She is a problem to manage. 20 minutes later, Lila's hybrid pulled to the curb. She looked pretty in that careful way, hair tucked, makeup that reads as bare. She hesitated when she saw me, then smiled with pity, a performance she knew well. Aria, she said, this is unnecessary. He just needed a place to decompress. Then decompress together, I said, and nudged a box toward Adrian with my foot. These go with you. Lila's gaze flicked to the camera. You're recording me? It's the building's camera, I said. Common area. Adrian reached for another lever. By the way, Lila's bi. She's not even into me like that. I couldn't help the laugh that left me. Ah, the sexuality shield. Classic. Whether she is or isn't into you changes nothing about your decision to live with your ex for a week and tell me not to mind. Color rose along his neck. He went for the box nearest him and yanked. The tape held. The box slid and bumped my shin. Not hard. Enough to record the intent. Careful, I said, soft. He threw the next line like a dart. You're going to regret this. We were perfect together. You were comfortable, I said. There's a difference. He hefted 2 boxes toward Lila's trunk. She popped it, expression neutral. For a moment, she watched me with something like curiosity, as if she couldn't decide whether to admire me or hate me. As they loaded the last bin, Lila tried one more time. You changed all the passwords? That's petty. Those accounts are mine, I said. You two can figure out your own entertainment. Adrian straightened. My Wi-Fi isn't working, he said, meaning my former Wi-Fi, reflexive entitlement baked into the pronoun. It's for residents, I said. Lila's signal should be fine. He stepped closer, the way someone does when they want the camera to catch your face at a worse angle. Last chance, he murmured. Let me in, and we'll talk tomorrow. Last chance, I echoed. Take your boxes, and we won't talk tomorrow. He stared, a long electric second. Then Lila touched his sleeve. Let's go, she said. They left with my hallway reflected in their rear window. The door clicked closed. The apartment expanded by an inch I could feel in my lungs. 5 minutes later, my phone began to buzz. The cycle began. Apologies poured, sugar thick, then insults, then bargaining, then threats, then nostalgia. I let each one stack into a tidy archive. Evidence, not conversation. Downstairs, I heard their car idling a beat too long before it finally pulled away. I imagined Lila asking Adrian why the Wi-Fi wouldn't connect, imagined him mumbling something about petty while opening a blank laptop that depended on passwords he no longer owned. I made tea, the kind that smells like oranges after rain, and stood in the doorway of the room he'd once half claimed. The hanger marks were still impressed in the carpet. The walls looked bare, hopeful. I pictured a slim desk against the window, a small lamp, a plant that actually thrives. The kettle sang softly. I turned off the burner and exhaled. This wasn't triumph, it was return. Of space, of narrative, of the plain right not to be told I was insecure for noticing fire. My phone buzzed again, a group text this time. Adrian plus Lila plus me. Lila. Aria, can you send the Netflix and Hulu passwords for the week? We're in the middle of a series. Me. No, those are my accounts. Adrian. Just give them to her. Don't be petty. Me. Buy your own. A bubble appeared, then disappeared. Adrian left the chat. I took my tea to the window. The city put on its ordinary night. Somewhere across it, a man who liked to say love while crowdsourcing validation had just learned what no sounds like when it's not explained to death. On my table, a neat stack of boxes waited to be hauled to the donation center. I labeled a final one, odds and ends, and slid in a handful of receipts for things I'd bought when we needed them. The pen left a deep groove in the cardboard. I turned out the light and let the dark be gentle. Tomorrow, I knew, would bring the extinction burst, the noisy last stand of a behavior that no longer works. But that was a problem for the morning. Tonight, I had my keys, and my quiet, and the cool, certain knowledge that I would not be told what my own boundaries meant. By morning, my phone was an orchestra of chaos. 42 missed messages, 6 voicemails, and 1 half-hearted, good morning beautiful that pretended the rest didn't exist. The first message said, I can't believe you're doing this. The second said, please, Aria, talk to me. The third simply read, you're insane. The extinction burst had arrived. I made coffee and watched the steam rise while the phone buzzed itself into exhaustion. Every notification was a recycled tactic from the manipulation playbook. Apologies polished like glass, threats whispered like prayer, guilt dressed as concern. Adrian, you've always been dramatic. Adrian, I was helping Lila, you know that. Adrian, you'll regret humiliating me. Adrian, you're still the love of my life. I archived them all. Every word was evidence, not dialogue. By 10 a.m., my inbox turned into his public stage. Lila had joined the performance now. Lila, I don't appreciate being dragged into your breakup. Me, you moved him into your apartment. Lila, for 1 week. Me, that's 1 week longer than my patience. At noon came the group text. Layla, could you please send the new Wi-Fi password? Adrian left some work files on his cloud. Me, no. Adrian, petty much? Me, boundaries aren't petty. They left the chat. Small victory, large peace. But the silence didn't last. That afternoon, my supervisor buzzed me on Teams. Can you step into HR for a moment? I already knew. Inside the beige conference room sat Laura, our HR manager, looking uncomfortable. So, she began, your boyfriend, well, ex, I guess, called, said you had an emotional episode and might need time off. Did he provide evidence? I asked. Her brows pinched. No, just concern. I slid my phone across the table. Here's a week of texts, and here, I added, opening a file, is a video from my hallway camera. You'll see him try to push past me, followed by me asking him to leave. Laura watched the 30-second clip, winced, and exhaled. Understood. We'll block his number, and if he contacts anyone here again, security will handle it. When I left HR, I didn't feel vindicated, just tired. By evening, the buzzing changed tone. His sister Monica called me. Aria, what did you do? Adrian says you threw him out. He moved in with his ex, I said evenly. I just locked the door he walked out of. You could have talked to him, she snapped. He's devastated. Devastated people don't coordinate smear campaigns, I said, and hung up. At 6:30, there was a knock. A man stood in the hallway with a toolkit and a clipboard. Locksmith, he said. Here for an emergency re-entry? My stomach tightened. Who called you? He looked at the order sheet. A Mr. Adrian Cole says he lives here. Behind him, Adrian appeared, hood up, hands jammed in his pockets, face rehearsed for outrage. Miss, I can't open a door without proof of residence, the locksmith said. I have proof, I said, producing my lease. His name isn't on it. Adrian glared. I've been living here for almost a year. Voluntarily, I said, until you decided to live somewhere else. The locksmith looked back and forth, uneasy. Sir, unless you're on the lease, I can't legally. Fine, Adrian snapped. I'll call the cops. Please do, I said. 20 minutes later, 2 officers arrived. One young, one seasoned enough to see the story before we spoke. They listened to both sides while I showed them the lease, the text, the video. The older officer turned to Adrian. Sir, you left voluntarily. You're not on the lease, and you've already retrieved your belongings. If you continue showing up here, it becomes harassment. Adrian's mouth opened, closed, opened again. So she gets away with kicking me out? She doesn't need permission to end cohabitation, the officer said. You need permission to force your way back in. He looked at me. Ma'am, if he returns uninvited, call us immediately and consider a restraining order. When they left, I locked the door again and slid down to the floor. The adrenaline hit late. After the door was sealed, after the sirens faded. I laughed once, sharp and breathless. The next morning, I learned how quickly pity becomes propaganda. Adrian posted on social media. After 2 years, she kicked me out with nowhere to go. Some people show their true colors when you're vulnerable. Homeless, #betrayal, #mental health awareness. At first, the comments flooded in sympathy. She did what? That's so cruel. You deserve better. Then, a single comment flipped the tide. It was from Maya, one of our mutual friends. Didn't you move in with your ex Lila for a week, though? The replies exploded. Confusion, curiosity, skepticism. Screenshots circulated. The narrative cracked in half. By evening, Adrian had deleted the post. Lila went private. But even silence can echo. That night, as I sat on my couch with takeout and a movie, my phone vibrated again. Unknown number. I almost ignored it until I saw the message preview. You think you've won? You just made me your enemy. I blocked the number. Then I emailed myself the screenshot, labeled it Evidence, Threats. Across the room, my lamp flickered. Old wiring, maybe, or just my nerves catching their reflection. I told myself I'd sleep. I told myself it was over. But the thing about people like Adrian is they don't end, they escalate. And somewhere deep down, I already knew the next knock on the door wouldn't be a locksmith. The next knock came 3 days later, not on my door, but from my inbox. Subject: Notice of Temporary Order Hearing. Adrian had filed a complaint claiming I'd illegally evicted him and withheld personal property. I stared at the email for a long minute before exhaling through my teeth. Of course he did, I whispered. Grand gestures of victimhood, his favorite art form. I forwarded everything to Marjorie, the lawyer Grandma had once recommended for quiet but relentless legal work. Within an hour, she replied, "I'll handle it. You don't have to play defense if you already have the truth." That line stuck with me. 2 days later, I walked into her office, a warm space that smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and resolve. She had already printed my entire evidence folder: screenshots, voicemail transcripts, lease documents, police reports. She tapped the top page. "This isn't an eviction case, Arya. This is a harassment pattern. We'll file a restraining order before he realizes the ground's already shifted." Her tone was calm, precise, lethal. By that afternoon, the paperwork was submitted. I walked out lighter, though my hands still trembled with the kind of adrenaline that comes from reclaiming your oxygen after years of someone else rationing it. But Adrian wasn't finished. Within 48 hours, fake dating profiles appeared online. My photos, my name, captions dripping with vulgarity. One of my coworkers saw them before I did. "Arya, this might sound weird," she said, showing me her phone, "but is this you?" It wasn't. It was his retaliation, neon and predictable. I spent the rest of that night filing reports, tracing IPs, documenting everything. The police confirmed what I already suspected. The accounts had been created from an IP linked to Lila's apartment. That discovery was equal parts fury and dark amusement. They'd turned her place, the same sanctuary he'd chosen over me, into a digital crime scene. The next day, a call came from an unfamiliar number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Arya, it's me." His voice was quiet this time, frayed around the edges. I didn't say anything. He continued, "I know you hate me, but Lila's losing it. She maxed my card, smashed my TV, threw my console out the window. She said if I kick her out, she'll tell people I hit her." He paused as if waiting for my sympathy. "You started this?" I said softly. He exhaled shakily. "Please, tell me what to do." "Document everything," I said. "Call a lawyer, and next time, don't build your house on someone else's foundation." He went silent. Then, bitterly, "You always think you're smarter." "I don't," I said. "I just stopped letting stupid win." And I hung up. By that evening, the universe delivered its karmic symmetry. Richard Cole, Adrian's father, called me. I hadn't spoken to him in months. He'd always been polite, the kind of man who preferred to stay out of conflict. "Arya," he said quietly, "I'm sorry for calling out of the blue. I just wanted to hear it from you. Is it true he stayed with Lila?" "Yes," I said simply. "He told me not to be insecure about it." There was a pause, long, weighted, then a sigh. "Well," he said, "that explains everything. He's at our house now. His mother's furious, but you did the right thing. I'm sorry you had to deal with him." When the call ended, I realized my hands weren't shaking anymore. The hearing came 2 weeks later. Courtrooms are strange places. Antiseptic, almost bored, as if justice were just another item on the day's schedule. I sat beside Marjorie while Adrian slouched across the aisle, hair slicked back, a new suit that didn't fit his posture. When his case was called, he launched into a practiced monologue. "She changed the locks. She threw my things out. I had nowhere to go." Marjorie stood, calm as ever. "Your Honor," she said, "if I may submit Exhibit A, a text message from Mr. Cole to my client, dated 2 weeks prior, stating he would be living with his ex Lila for a week." The judge's brows lifted. "Is this accurate, Mr. Cole?" Adrian stammered. That was temporary." The judge nodded slowly. "And the lease? Whose name is on it?" "Arya's," Marjorie said, handing over the document. "He was not a tenant. He left voluntarily." Silence. The judge sighed, flipping through the pages. "Mr. Cole, this isn't an eviction. This is consequence." Then he looked at me. "Ms. Vale, do you still want the restraining order?" "Yes," I said. "I want to be left alone." The judge signed the order. 2 years, no contact. The gavel came down like the softest thunder. Adrian's composure cracked. "Your Honor, where am I supposed to live?" The judge didn't even look up. "That's not her concern, sir." Outside, the air felt like spring. Not because it was warm, but because it was clean. As I stepped onto the courthouse steps, I saw Adrian's mother waiting by a pillar, her shoulders sagged, eyes red-rimmed. She didn't yell, didn't plead, just said, "I'm sorry, we didn't raise him to do this." I nodded once. "I know." She hesitated. "He'll learn one day." "Maybe," I said, "but I won't be his lesson." That night, I came home and looked at the closet that used to be his. It was empty, except for a small desk I'd bought the week before. Light wood, clean lines. I set a small lamp on top, turned it on, and watched the light spill softly across the walls. This was the first time the apartment felt like mine again. The Wi-Fi hummed. The streaming apps loaded without interruption. The air was still. For the first time in months, I didn't check the hallway camera before bed. And when I turned off the light, I realized something beautiful. Peace doesn't announce itself. It just stops knocking. 3 months later, the world had gone quiet. No knocks, no threats, no ghost texts at midnight. Peace had a strange sound, not silence exactly, but the hum of stability. The kettle whistling, the soft clack of my keyboard, Eli's laughter from the apartment next door where my neighbor babysat her grandson. It wasn't dramatic, it was ordinary. And ordinary, after chaos, felt miraculous. I hadn't heard from Adrian since the restraining order hearing, though the grapevine occasionally whispered updates I never asked for. Apparently, things between him and Lila had imploded fast. First, he'd tried moving in permanently. She resisted. Then came the shouting, the broken glass, the predictable breakup post on her socials. Sometimes people pretend to be your peace when they're really your punishment. Within a week, she'd deleted it. By the next, her profile was private. Adrian, meanwhile, drifted from couch to couch, then finally back to his parents' house. His father, Richard, texted once more. For what it's worth, he's finally seeing a therapist. We told him he needed to understand what boundaries mean. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Life moved on quietly. I'd started volunteering at a local literacy program and rediscovered the stillness that comes from reading without noise in your head. I even reconnected with an old college friend, Caleb, who taught photography nearby. We met for coffee one Saturday morning. Simple, cautious, unromantic. He had his own apartment, his own life, and never once made me justify my independence. When I told him I was worried about moving too fast, he smiled. "Then we'll walk slow," he said. It wasn't fireworks, it was warmth. A kind of love that didn't demand proof of loyalty or forgiveness for breathing. One evening, as I was folding laundry, my phone buzzed with an email notification. The subject line made my pulse hitch. From unknown. Subject: You always thought you were stronger than you are. Attached was a photo. Me and Adrian, months before the implosion, fake smiles at a friend's wedding. The message had no signature, no return address. For a long minute, I just stared at it. Then I hit forward, sent it straight to my lawyer, and deleted it. I didn't cry, didn't rage, just whispered, "I am stronger." Because it was true. I was stronger than the girl who apologized for boundaries. Stronger than the woman who mistook manipulation for love. Stronger than the silence that used to suffocate me. Weeks turned into months. I repainted the apartment. Pale sage on the walls, warm gold curtains, sunlight pouring in like a steady heartbeat. I kept the desk in the closet room and started writing again. Stories about people learning to rebuild without permission. And then, on an ordinary Tuesday morning, the universe gave me a gift disguised as routine. A letter. Not from Adrian. Not from any ghost of him. From the local college's adult education department. "Congratulations," it began. "You've been accepted into our creative writing program. Full scholarship." For a second, I couldn't move. My coffee went cold. My pulse didn't. I'd applied months ago, on a whim, late at night when the apartment still echoed with absence. I'd written a personal statement that ended with, "I want to learn how to tell the truth beautifully, even when it hurts." Now, the door I'd forgotten I knocked on had opened. When I told Grandma, she didn't get emotional. She just poured coffee, slid a cookie toward me, and said, "About time someone gave you credit for knowing your own story." Caleb hugged me when I told him. "You're going to kill it," he said. "And don't say you're nervous. You already survived a soap opera. School's nothing." The night before classes began, I sat at my desk, the one that replaced Adrian's empty space, and wrote a single sentence at the top of a blank page. This time, no one else gets to write my ending. I looked around the apartment, tidy, soft, alive. The place where chaos had once slept now belonged only to peace. And somewhere across town, in some other story, maybe Adrian was still blaming the world for the consequences he chose. Maybe Lila was doing the same. But here, in this small apartment with sage walls and gold light, there was no blame left to carry. Just me, still standing, still free.